Our last lesson for exponent properties or rules. And the big one for this one is going to be talking about negative exponents. So our first little box here is going to kind of help us understand the negative exponent rule. So if you were to take out your calculator and you did 3 raised to the third power, you should get 27. If you take 3 to the second power, you should get 9. 3 to the first power is 3. 3 to the 0 power is 1. So hopefully everybody's been okay with typing those in so far into their calculator. And then hopefully everybody notices that if I just took 27 and I divided it by 3, I get 9. And if I take 9 and divide it by 3, I get 3. And 3 divided by 3 is 1. So now on my calculator, if I take 3 raised to the negative 1, it's going to give me a decimal of 0.3 repeating. But we don't want a decimal, we want a fraction. So remember to convert that over. So hit your decimal to fraction key. So that's second PRB. So if you hit second PRB, is everybody okay with 1/3? Or if you took our same philosophy and you took 1 and divided it by 3, 1 divided by 3 is 1/3. If you took 3 and you raised it to the negative second, you would get negative 0.1 repeating. And then if you convert that over, second PRB, you get 1/9. And the last one, if you take 3 raised to the negative third, you will get 0.037 repeating. And if you convert that over, you get 1/27. So if your exponent is positive, like it was here on these, you ended up with a nice, neat whole number. But if you have a negative exponent, you got a decimal answer, which the decimal answer we converted into a fraction. Well, how can I do this without figuring out the decimal on my calculator and then converting it from a decimal to a fraction? And that's what our rule off to the side is going to help us with. Our rule off to the side. Now, don't forget here, you still got a coefficient of 1 in front of x raised to the negative a. So does everybody notice I left the coefficient of 1 alone? I left it on top of my fraction. I didn't move it. But to make it a positive exponent, does everybody notice I just took it from the top of the fraction and moved it to the bottom of the fraction? So if I came over here to the side on this one, if I took 3 to the negative first and I moved it down, it would become positive 3, and that's how I got 1/+3. So moral of the story, if you have a negative exponent, you're going to move it to the bottom of the fraction, and it will become a positive exponent then. Okay, so you'll notice now in my directions, instead of just saying simplify, it now also says, ooh, there's a stipulation. Your stipulation is you can simplify, but your final answer must have positive exponents only. Okay, first problem. Don't forget I got a coefficient of 1 here. That 1 doesn't have any exponents, so I'm going to leave it alone. And then the x to the negative fifth, I'm going to move that from the top to the bottom of the fraction. So my final answer is 1/x to the fifth. Straight across. 3. That doesn't have an exponent, so I'm going to leave the 3 alone. Leave that alone. And now the m has a negative exponent, so the m is the only part that I move to the bottom. So you're looking at 3 over m to the second. Now, here's a fun part. We're going to take all of the rules that we've talked about and start meshing them throughout the rest of these problems. Yay, so I hope you didn't forget those. So if we go back to this one, multiply your coefficients. So 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. And when you're timesing, you should add your exponents. So for x, you would have 8 plus negative 7, which is 1. 18 doesn't have an exponent, so I don't have to worry about it. X has a positive exponent of 1, so I'm done. I don't have to move anything on that one because there are no negative exponents. Okay, next problem. Oh, power to a power u times. So for 3, I'm going to take 1 times negative 2, which is negative 2. For x, I'm going to take 3 times negative 2, which is negative 6. Okay. They both have a negative exponent, so I'm going to take both of them and move it to the bottom. So it'll become 3 to the positive second, x to the positive 6. Now, we can't have a blank on top. So if you move everything from the top to the bottom, then that means on the top, you're just going to have a 1. And then we're almost finished. On the bottom, I'm just going to go ahead and work out 3 to the second power, and 3 to the second power is 9. So final answer is 1 over 9 x to the 6th. Okay, same philosophy on the next one. So I'm going to take negative 8, multiply my exponents, so that would be raised to the negative second. For x, 5 times negative 2 is a negative 10. And for y, negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8. The 8 has a negative exponent. The 10 has a negative exponent, but the y does not. So please keep the y on the top of the fraction. And when you move the other 2 to the bottom of the fraction, then they will have positive exponents. And last thing we want to do is just negative 8 to the second power is positive 64. Remember to use parentheses if you're using your calculator. If you don't use parentheses, it will give you the wrong answer because negative 8 times negative 8 is positive 64. All right, next one. On this one, there are no powers outside the parentheses, so we're not going to be timesing any exponents. So this is just straight up multiplication. So when you're multiplying, you add exponents. So for A, I'm going to take negative 5 plus 7. For B, I'm going to take 8 plus negative 3. And for C, I'm going to take negative 12 plus 7. So that's going to give me A to the second, B to the 5th, and C to the negative 5th. C has a negative exponent, so it's going to go down. A to the second, B to the 5th are going to stay on top because they have positive exponents. And then on the bottom, it becomes C to the positive 5th. Done. Okay, next one. If we are dividing, then we subtract exponents. And remember, you take top exponent minus bottom exponent. So h raised to the 4 minus 6, which gives me h to the negative second. That's a negative exponent, so move it to the bottom. Can't have nothing on the top. So remember, if you move everything to the bottom, you automatically have a 1 on the top. So 1 over h to the positive second. Next one. Well, 14 divided by 7 is 2. When you're dividing, you subtract exponents. So 4 minus a negative 2. Well, minus a negative will switch to a positive. So you're really looking at 2w raised to the 6th. There are no negative exponents, so you're done. Okay, once again, dividing, we're still going to subtract exponents. So for x, 4 minus 2. Y is negative 3 minus 2. So you get x to the 2nd, y to the negative 5th. Y has a negative exponent, so move it to the bottom. So you get x to the 2nd over y to the 5th. Done. Next one. Negative 24 divided by 2 is negative 12. If you're dividing, you subtract your exponents. So 5 minus a negative 2. Minus a negative is going to switch to a positive. So you got negative 12x to the positive 7th. There are no negative exponents, so you're done. Don't let the fact that that's a negative coefficient confuse you, because you do not move a negative coefficient. You only move if it's a negative exponent. So you got to make sure you keep that in mind. Right. On the next one. Okay, we're multiplying here. So 6 times 5 is 30. And when we're multiplying, we add exponents. So for A, 3 plus 9 is 12. And then I didn't do anything to the bottom. So now if we're dividing, we're going to go ahead and divide the coefficients. So 30 divided by negative 12 gives me a decimal. So make sure you take that decimal and convert it to a fraction, which gives me negative 5/2. And then if you are dividing, you subtract your exponents. So 12 minus 14. So you get negative 5/2 a to the negative 2nd. Okay, now I'm going to take that a to the negative 2nd, and I'm going to move that on the bottom with that 2, because does everybody see that coefficient of 2 is already on the bottom? So I'm going to move the a squared down there so it becomes positive. So my final answer would be negative 5 on top over 2a squared. Okay, next problem. Oh, the first parentheses has a power on the outside, so let's deal with this first. Boom, I put a box in it. Let's deal with that. So multiply your powers. So 3 to the 2nd, x to the 2nd, y to the 2nd. Then on the top, we're going to times that by 2x to the 4th, y to the 3rd. So on your calculator or in your brain, we're going to take 3 to the 2nd power, which is 9, and then 9 times 2 is 18. And when you're timesing, you're going to add your exponents. So for x, 2 plus 4 is 6. And we're also going to add our exponents for y, and 2 plus 3 is 5. And then all of that is over 6x to the 8th y. So now divide your coefficients to 3. And then we're going to subtract our exponents. So 6 minus 8. And for y, 5 minus 1. Don't forget, if there's not an exponent, that is a magic little 1. So we got 3x to the negative 2nd, y to the 4th. Oh, can't have a negative exponent. So on the top, I have 3y to the 4th. And on the bottom, I have to move that x squared so it becomes positive. Done. Oh, and then we save the best for last. Look at this one. Yeah. We're going to feel like masters after we conquer this one. So let's start with our first parentheses that has a power on the outside. So remember, power to a power u times. So that's going to be 2 to the negative second, x to the negative eighth, y to the sixth. And then I'm going to do the next part on the top. So times, remember, power to a power, you multiply exponents. So 2 to the fourth, x to the negative fourth, y to the negative eighth. So now let's clean the top up a little bit. So on my calculator, I am going to take 2 raised to the negative second times 2 raised to the fourth. And if I do that, I come up with 4. And remember, if you're multiplying, you add exponents. So negative 8 plus negative 4 is negative 12. And for y, 6 plus negative 8 is negative 2. And then on the bottom, I still have 2, x to the negative seventh, y to the negative third. And then I have all of that, because then you'll notice we have the great big parentheses, so I have all of that raised to the third power. So now we're going to deal with that power of 3 on the outside. So once again, power to a power, you're going to multiply the exponents. We have to do that on top and on bottom. So you're going to have 4 to the third, and then you're going to have x to the negative 36 and y to the negative 6. Over and do the same process for the bottom. 2 to the third, x to the negative 21st, and y to the negative 9th. So now on my calculator, I'm going to take 4 raised to the third divided by 2 raised to the third. And on my fabulous calculator, I get 8. And then remember, when you're dividing, you're going to subtract your exponents. So negative 36 minus negative 21. And for y, negative 6 minus negative 9. Minus negatives are going to switch to positives. So we're looking at 8. And then negative 36 plus 21 is x to the negative 15th. And for y, negative 6 plus 9 is y to the third. Oh, can't call done. Can't say done because I got a negative exponent. So x needs to go to the bottom. So leave 8 y to the third on the top and move x to the 15th to the bottom. And we are done. Hopefully after doing that one, you're going to think that these 4 down here are a piece of cake, or hopefully a lot easier. So give them a whirl. Please have them done, and we'll talk about them in class. Thanks.